What are subtle red flags at a job interview that say working here would suck? I always ask about training and learning curves. Every job I've had that went wrong, I noticed that when the question came up, they stumbled. The current job I have, when I asked the question, they had sparks in their eyes as they explained the whole process from day one of shadowing to the transition to working solo. And even when COVID hit, they managed to continue without skipping a beat. They told me all about their generous severance packages. In the initial interview, Turnover City. Well, the overtime isn't mandatory, but most folks stick around after hours most days. Spoilers, the overtime is mandatory. Fantastic. You should know that if you choose me for this position, I will be declining the optional overtime. I mean, if you're going to walk anyway, it might be funny to call their bluff. The most terrifying thing is that in any places, the managers won't even need to threaten you to work overtime. Your coworkers will shame you for leaving early if you leave right when your working time is over. So my partner worked for a place that offered overtime every weekend, but he always said no because he didn't want to work 7 days a week, and the amount of disappointment and head shaking he got was unreal. Plus his start time was 7:30, and he was always told most the guys clock in half an hour early to get ready for the day, and was constantly getting spoken to about being late because he would clock in at 7:30 because they expected everyone to show up early so the day could be productive. Cyrillic letter U. My sister and I got into many fights because she agreed he should do like everyone else and show up early because it was professional and expected in the working world, whereas I was on the side of, you clock in when your shift starts. They aren't paying for that extra time, so WTF would you go in early every day? My mom also agrees it's what's expected at jobs, so I don't know if I'm wrong or not, but fuck that. Was interviewed by a senior programmer and the department head. The department head was continuously making condescending remarks towards the other interviewer. Poor guy just sounded broken. Hope he's somewhere else now. On a second interview, the general manager brought me into the conference room with his 8 managers present. At first I thought it was a meet and greet, but no, they grilled me for an hour and a half. Didn't appreciate that, along with a couple other things, and politely withdrew from being considered. Couple months later, I'm playing in a ball tournament and come across one of the managers. I mentioned how weird that interview was. He says, "Weird for you? Huh. I found out then and there you were being interviewed for my job." Yep, dodged a bullet there. I was once part of a group onboarding for an IT job. They handed us all the one-page new hire contract, and everyone except me signed immediately. When I read the paperwork, I discovered we were signing a mystery document. Clauses included I agree to abide by the personal search and seizure security policy, attached. Without other pages, there was no way to determine what I was agreeing to. I kept requesting more and more pages until the HR drone said, "Okay, I guess, me, is just determined to hold everyone up. We will handle you separately if you're struggling so much." After I walked out and drove home, I called the hiring manager to apologize for not taking the job. He informed me that HR reported I had walked out after refusing to be drug tested. I was asked to sign a contract that gave the employer full access to my medical records. It was supposedly for drug testing, but worded badly. I signed every other page, and got the job. Would have been very interesting if they felt like drug testing me, and they weren't able to. Once an interviewer straight up asked me if I had any trouble working for free on weekends. I told them my free time is more valuable than anything, and that the only way that I would work a weekend is if they are paying me and if I felt like working a weekend. She got really mad at me and ended the interview right away. Biggest red flag I've ever seen, because they didn't even try to hide it. Since when is it legal to have employees working and not paying them? What a psycho. Last job I worked. Yay, everyone here is new, but it's totally because of COVID. The boss doesn't like people going out to get lunch because they're afraid you'll never come back, so be in your own lunch. You'll get weird looks if you leave on time. It was a Chinese-owned company with heavy Chinese work culture influence, so you were expected to stay overtime all week. Also, the people here are nice, but it's pretty stressful. Ada also was told by my trainer, "You want to know the best advice I can give you? Find another job." This was like my second weekend. "They're afraid you'll never come back" is so funny to me. When they ask out of nowhere, "What clients can you bring with you?" I interviewed with MetLife Insurance about 20 years ago. They demanded that I provide them with a contact list of no fewer than 100 friends and family. Noped out of that quickly. My favorite is there's a lot of people waiting in line to work here. Count yourself lucky. Huge red flag. This actually happened to me. Interviewer, do you have any questions for us? Me, what is a challenge this department has recently faced? Interviewer, job security. LeMayo gotta give them props for honesty at that point. He should have just gotten up and opened the door and gestured out. How do you even answer after that? Just okay and walk away? When you are signing all the forms they give you and you are taking your time to read over every document so that you can fully understand what you are getting into, and people come in and start telling you that you don't need to read this and that just sign here and so on. I didn't know it at the time, but you'll be wearing many hats was a sign that they were going to give me the work of 4 positions and the wage of 1. I didn't last a year there before I left, and now I won't even finish reading job ads that include that line. That's a non-profit motto if I ever heard one. If you are unsure what direction you want to take your career, many hats jobs do help you figure it out. They will also leave you angry, tired and frustrated, but you'll leave with a better sense of what you are good at and what you like doing. You are required to wear clothing that has the company logo. You must purchase it yourself from the company. This is illegal in most U.S. states, and known about outside the U.S. My current boss gave me a great tip on the last interview I had. He said ask them if you can pick an employee to chat with about how they like the position you're applying for. They'll give a better impression of the place than management. I got the job I was interviewing for. I turned it down because the above is the kind of management I want to keep in my life. Also, the place undercut my pay offer, I found out, which is certainly also a red flag. Jobs where the expectations of the position aren't clear. The person hiring you should be able to give a clear idea of your responsibilities or day-to-day in a practical way. It shows that the company understands what it wants out of the position. I've worked a couple positions that had a really hard time figuring out who was supposed to do what. That led to a lot of confusion, and both of them had this in the interviews. If the company you're working for can't define what success in that position looks like, you won't be able to either. I was interviewed for a job like this. When I walked into the interview, it was made clear that the job was being offered and was mine if I wanted it, on my credentials alone. It was a library supervisor job at a rare items and fine arts library. An hour into the interview, despite asking several times, they couldn't tell me what I would be doing. Slowly, it came out that there were frequent fights in the library I would need to break up, student mental breakdowns I would somehow have to handle as a mental health professional. The kicker was that the library held a lot of fine art, and I would need to stop people from, literally, stealing the Warhols. They wanted a librarian who I guess was somehow Batman. I got an email that the position was dissolved 6 months later. I once showed up for an interview and the manager wasn't there that day. No one called me to let me know. The assistant manager was not apologetic for the scheduling issue at all. She was literally just like, "Oh, she's not here today," in a tone that suggested I should somehow already know that. She said they would call me to reschedule sometime the next week. I told her I was currently unavailable MW but could come in anytime. She said if I couldn't make time for the interview, I probably wouldn't be a good fit. I said okay, and went on to my other interviews and ending up working elsewhere. You'd think that would be the end of it, but both the manager and the assistant manager badmouthed me to a few other people in the industry, including one of my friends. Hello? I made time for an interview. You disrespected me by not calling me to let me know it was canceled. I gave you the times I was available to reschedule, and that was disrespectful somehow? When you ask, "What do you like about working here?" and the interviewer talks about the location of the job, it's a great place to live, instead of the actual job. We only want the best of the best. Me, how much are you paying? Minimum wage. I brought up a company's awful Glassdoor reviews and they got so mad they ended the interview. Well, guess I dodged that bullet. If they seem too relieved that someone actually showed up for the interview. I was once told sometimes the hourly workers go on strike and they lock us in to keep the production line running, but management brings us steaks and we have an informal agreement with the union so you can cross the picket lines once a week to visit your wife. The question was subtle red flags. Employees are either new hires or have been there for 15+ years with no in between. There is RNO room for improvement. It's better to leave for advancement. Everyone looks tired. Also, you don't see anyone in your department before working in it other than the boss. Made this mistake a few times. Was the worst jobs. I came in for a job interview at 7:30 p.m. The entire staff was still in the office. Should have known right then that 9 to 5 was not ever going to happen. One day I worked until 2:30 a.m. to finish up a big project, and my boss said to me I could come in an hour later the next morning. Gee, thanks bro. With my public transport travel time, that gives me a solid 2 hours of sleep instead of just the one. When they feel the need to reassure you in the interview that at the company, they work hard, but also play hard. They don't play hard, it's a sweatshop and they're just trying to convince that it's anything but one. We don't like clock-watchers here. We expect everyone to be committed. Expecting more work for no extra pay. Getting mad at you when you leave at 5 even though your stated work hours end at 5. Always ask the interviewer about the last person who worked the position you are interviewing for, how long they worked, and why they left. Their answers can be very telling of the work environment.